growing up, I feel like we forget that our parents had full adventure-packed lives before we were even born. And as I've come across this revolutionary idea, I realized that my mom has some pretty good stories to tell. And I thought that you guys might enjoy to also hear the life of Betty.
Make me an angel that flies from Montgomery. Make me a poster of an old rodeo.
To start our story, we went all the way back to Statesville, North Carolina, about 30 minutes north of us, where my mom was born. My mom lived in Statesville with her parents as an only child until she moved away for college. So she knows this town like the back of her hand, and she was thrilled to be back, but not as thrilled to see the condition that her home was left in.
We are close to where I grew up. The house behind us that's very rundown is where I lived when I was born. That I was brought home from the hospital to that house. And it didn't look like that. It was very well kept up. So I lived there. My cousins lived in my backyard, or their backyard and our backyard butted up against each other. So there was Cowan's grocery store and then Cowan's service station. And then my grandmother lived right next door. So it was just a little community of us.
Yeah, what were your parents like growing up?
Can I tell you how I'm feeling right this second?
Yeah.
I'm sad. 'Cause I'm sitting back to my back is where my parents, my father's service station was, and my grandmother's house that we ended up living in after she died when I was 13. The house that I'm looking at is making me very sad because my cousins Susie and David lived there, and it was a beautiful house, believe it or not, and so many memories here. It's just so sad to see the things that used to be so normal and well kept, and we cherished these little places that we played and that kind of stuff. That it's just sad to see things being so run down. My parents had me when my dad was 53 and my mom was 43, something like that. They married because they each lost their spouses and married for companionship, and then turned out they were going to have a baby. So they loved me more than anything, and they knew they were very fortunate to have a child at their age and really cherished me. But my dad had a lot of trouble, alcoholic, mentally ill, untreated. My mom was very depressed. I knew early on that I was going to kind of have to take care of myself in a way. My extended family raised me too. My grandmother was right across the street. Things got too chaotic. I could just go to my grandmother's house. She called me Troops, and she was great. I miss her still. The way I lived was that I didn't need anybody, that I was pretty independent. So I've had to learn to be vulnerable, and I'm still learning that after all these years. So it made me very strong, and I appreciate that, and it made me better at what I do for a living, and I appreciate that. I noticed what was wrong with my environment early on, and what felt safe, what didn't feel safe, what people felt like, their energy. I didn't put it in those words, but I learned that kind of to make sure I was going to be okay, because my dad I could tell how the door shut with whether or not he'd been drinking or not. And we just kind of go from there. This is our backyard. It looks like a huge tree here where we played with our cowboys and Indians. That's where I lived from the time I was born until I was 10 years old. And this is where we played. This is where I grew up, right here. Our swing set was here. And there was another building here that my uncle owned. This is the place the school that I was going to, when they weighed us in the gym and measured us in the gym.
Oh my God.
On one side of the gym was the scale, on the other side was the where they measured how tall we were, and they hollered out across the gym. I weighed more than any football player on the team. I started to get heavy. In my first grade pictures, you could tell that I was definitely the biggest kid in school. I don't remember people being mean to me, but I knew that I wasn't really accepted, but I wasn't not accepted. It was just kind of difficult. I remember laughing at myself a lot before people would laugh at me. So I guess I was funny, or tried to be funny, kind of laugh it off. And then in, I guess, the summer of 8th grade, I lost, well, not just the summer, but mostly during the summer, I lost 100 pounds plus. And I remember going back to 9th grade and people didn't know who I was. I was totally different. And from that point on, it's been hard to keep my weight to a normal amount. But I'm sure I was anorexic, but they didn't call it that then.
Yeah.
My parents would try to make me eat because they thought I was getting skinny, although they were heavy, and compared to them, I was skinny. But I'm really glad that I was able to do that, because life kind of changed at that point. Women are kind of invisible after they get to be about, I don't know, 45 or 50 at the most. You just don't get any looks, from the time you're, I don't know, you have any kind of shape to you at all. You kind of notice men glancing at you. And not that I would try to have that happen, but when it would happen, I would always think, okay, they're looking at me because I'm fat. And I was not fat. I was the size I am now. It's like you got a fat brain. Even though you have a slim body, you still think of yourself as bigger than you actually are. Food's a hard addiction to have because you have to eat. You can't, I don't have to do heroin. I don't have to smoke pot. I don't have to do anything, any kind of substance. I can just abstain from it. You can't abstain from food. You have to learn to use it, and use it in a way that it doesn't harm you. Yeah.
Did your parents ever understand when you were trying to lose weight?
No, they never. I think they kind of wanted me to stay big, because when I was big, of course, I never got any attention at all from boys. And then shortly after I lost weight, I met Jeff. Go figure. So they're probably right. I probably should have stayed big and not had any boyfriends, so I had more sense.
Jeff was my mom's first husband and the father to her first son, Nick. They were high school lovers, married right out of college.
It felt like, how can he like me? And when I look back on it, it's like, how could I have liked him? I guess you'd call it dated, but it was more hanging out. At some point, we broke up. Soon after we started dating, I don't remember why we broke up. And then his brother asked me out, his younger brother, which was really crazy. We didn't date that long, but we always got along, because it was me and Keith and Jeff a lot. And he knew how mean Jeff could be. And so I think he never really spoke about it, but I think he really understood that I wasn't being treated right by Jeff at times. And we dated through high school. I don't even think he graduated high school. I don't even know. My mother actually had him expelled. She was a substitute teacher in his class when he was like in 8th or 9th grade. His dad was a severe alcoholic. And one of the first times I remember being with Jeff, he took off his own braces. He just didn't want to have them on anymore.
So I'll start with the first obvious question. How did you guys first meet?
I think there's been different stories of how we met, and so we're not actually sure.
No?
One version is we met at the lake when Betty was dating Jeff.
Yeah.
And I had a crush on a guy, and so I ended up down there at the trailer.
The Martin trailer.
The Martin trailer. And I think Betty and we may have met there.
How old were you guys when you guys met?
So I'm 3 years younger,
Yeah.
but I was very mature. That's why Betty liked me.
Yeah.
Maybe I was 14.
Well, you drove at an early age.
I did.
She lived in
I
South
lived in
Carolina.
South Carolina, and I think you can get your license when you're 10. I'm just kidding. You can get your license when you're 14, or back then. I was very independent. I kind of raised myself. That's probably one of the reasons we kind of fit together nicely, because you raised yourself as well. Right.
But
The other potential of where we met was we both worked in a diner.
I think that's where.
And I think it is too.
I think we met at the country
Kitchen.
He had us run the place
He did. It was
Oh.
crazy. He was out having a fling, I think.
with one of the waitresses.
Yeah.
That never worked. We were the waitresses that worked. She was the waitress that worked on him. We literally ran the place, and it was breakfast, lunch, and dinner. It wasn't just
It
breakfast.
was ridiculous. But we only did that for a summer, right?
I think so. But then you went to college. I mean,
You
I went to college.
We lost touch for a while.
Yeah. So when I went to college, they bought a bar in Statesville. I dated him some in college, but I broke up for about 2 years, I guess. And I'll never forget, I knew that I shouldn't do this, but he asked if he could come down. It was on a Saturday. And I said yes, and he took me to this antique place in Salisbury, I believe. It wasn't like because he bought me that I got back together with him, but he knew that was kind of my weak area. I'll never forget, we were going down the road. He had it was a red Mustang that was so dirty that there was literally a pot plant that had sprouted in dirt because he smoked a lot of pot. And I guess a seed had gotten in the floorboard and there was a sprout coming out. A sprouted seed was coming, I saw which again should have been a warning. But I remember we were going down the road and I looked in the rearview mirror and this song, You're Still the One, maybe by the Doobie Brothers or something, was playing, and I thought, okay, I screwed up. And at some point we started looking at houses in Salisbury because he wanted to buy a house, and we found a house, and I think I probably married him because we bought the house, to be honest.
To learn more about this era of her life, we traveled back to Salisbury, North Carolina, and met up with her old friend and coworker from the bar that Jeff owned, Carrie Poole.
Actually, I had like Lululemons on a darling. I can't be seen in those.
Carrie got out some photos from the past, and we looked through and took a stroll down memory lane.
God, I was young. How old was I?
Honey.
At the end of the bar, like you come around to the corner of the bar, and then you go back behind the bar, and then there's a storage room. Yep. And that's where we put all the big black leather jackets, because we wouldn't let them have them in the bar because
They're
they had
colors.
guns and shit. And so this guy that I didn't know who he was, but I did like that because he was coming behind the bar. And I just said, stop. And he just looked at me like, who are you? Weird look, like I just got caught by my mom doing something I shouldn't have. He just turned into this little boy. And I've got his jacket, he gave it to me, and it's like, so heavy with stuff in it. I'll never forget, Robert Kaiser came back and he said, Betty, do you know who that was? And I said, no. I said, he's not supposed to come back here, right? He said, well, we kind of let him come back here because that's Meathead. I said, I don't know who Meathead is. What do you mean Meathead? He said, he's the head of the Outlaws and he just got out of prison.
Oh, yay.
Ooh.
Yay, Mom.
But I stopped him.
Good for you.
I did what I was told. Don't let anybody come out of the bar. So I was just listening to directions. But that was probably not. What was it with the Outlaws in the bar?
Well, the saloon had been closed where they hung out. I don't know if it was permanently closed or renovations.
Oh, that's right.
So they all started coming up to the bar. But the story, and this is the big ticket item, is that the thing about that bar is the country club people, the Outlaws, and everyone in between hung out there. And everyone got along. And if there was a fight, it wasn't, two different groups. It was within their group.
We decided to travel downtown to see how the bar looks today, and it was very different, but my mom still felt a lot of feelings towards it.
Does just seeing it bring back other memories?
Yeah, it makes my stomach hurt. It wasn't a good time. I met Carrie. That's about the best thing that came from it. She's wonderful. The day my mom died, I called her. She was in New York City, flat broke. She came down. The second I called, she got on a plane and came down. I'll never forget that. Oh, this is here. We have a little stand right here. We charge people coming in for the bands.
Yeah.
Wow. So did she tell you the doors were off?
Yeah.
It's different.
While Betty and Carrie reminisce about their past, I will catch you guys up on this bar's past. It was called 1849, and it was originally bought by Jeff and his brother in 1977, which Betty then also co-managed with him straight out of college and continued to until 1980 when they separated.
Who's that?
Boogerface. Carrie loved Nick. Remember you bring him down to the bar and I'd nurse him and he'd take him back home?
That's so weird.
We're en route to your wedding. We're going through, I guess, what we call security
Back then.
at this airport. Well, had cocaine. I did not know she had cocaine. She whispers to me, "Oh shit, I got cocaine," or something like that.
That was a joint.
No. Well, that too. She ducked off to the bathroom somehow and ate it.
Oh, what?
She in the bag and everything.
Oh, stop it!
Is that good to do? Is that?
Honey, I don't know.
Is that?
You need to tell the people you're with if you have anything.
If you're planning on committing a crime.
Yeah, they let us go, which was just like, really?
Do you want to tell you that we were groupies for the Nighthawks?
You guys were groupies?
Well, looking back, yeah, I think we were.
Oh my god.
At the time, it
I
felt
think
like
we
we.
knew that.
The term.
I think we thought we were just like their friends. Now looking back, I think we were groupies. Now you can take thousands.
Oh yeah. Look at you. What? You were so cute. What happened?
What the heck?
So the bar was a big deal, Locke.
Yeah.
It was a big deal for so many people. Most people have been to more than one bar.
Yeah.
They've been to more towns, they've been to more things, but it was just a niche, you know, this little timeline, this little sliver of opportunity that of course could in modern day never exist again because of social media and all that.
Oh no.
Everything about where you go in the bar tonight? I mean, that was it. People would go socialize and to drink, of course, or to dance or to party and, you know, hook up. I mean, back then, the worst thing that could happen to you was pregnancy.
No disease.
It was early enough. It was that in that window between the birth control pill being invented and AIDS. So things were just different.
They do like this. They get in their pockets. They're gonna pay you, right? And they're looking down. They finally decide, oh yeah, I'm paying for a beer. And they take everything they had out of their pockets. They take money. They take knives. They take pills. It's just like this plethora of stuff. And then I remember picking the money out of it because they had no way, they couldn't count. They were just so messed up.
And we, of course, would just keep serving them. Back then, the police would be like, okay, now you be careful.
Yeah.
Wow.
Were you there the night that he had that guy in the alley? I don't know who it was. It was right before he got married. Just awful. Because I remember walking out to the alley and thinking, oh my God, this is not good. Because I mean, he was so angry. I was just like freaking out because I'd never seen anything like that before. I mean, I'd seen Jeff mad, but not like that. He was just, I thought he was going to kill the guy. I really thought he was, and that's terrible. That I thought the person I was going to marry,
My future husband's going to kill that man.
What was I thinking? I
Well, that is the question.
I went to college. You know, I just went to college thinking I'll never see him again, I guess. And then he kept coming around and, you know, I don't know.
What was it?
I don't know. I think I thought I could save him. I would kind of run the bar when he would disappear for sometimes 2 weeks at a time, and or maybe more than that. And he'd call me and say things like, "I'm not going to be able to come back to Salisbury. There are too many people that want to kill me." It was really, really a frightening time because he would tell me, you know, "You're never going to see me again." He'd tell me where money was hidden in the house, and it was just a crazy, crazy situation. Carrie I met, she was a bartender at the bar, and Jeff was always very jealous because Carrie and I got to be really close, and she and Jeff were close before. I guess he always thought I stole her away from him, but one day Carrie was over, we were just visiting, and he came in shortly after she left and asked me something about, you know, had Carrie been there? And I said, yes, she came over just to talk or whatever. And I remember him hitting the dining room door. Here's the door. He hit it, you know, just like he wasn't hitting me, but it was as if he was hitting me. And Nick was, you know, a toddler. He got out of his high chair, went over and mimicked his dad. I remember looking at Jeff and meeting his eyes, and I think he knew at that moment that I was done. So that night, he was drinking. He always was drinking. And so I decided, okay, I'm going to wait till he passes out, because he always would. And as soon as he passed out, I got up, and these are where my priorities were at this point in time. I got my stereo speakers, which were like, you know, really big and really nice. Put those in the car. I put Nick's clothes in the car, some of my clothes in the car, and all my albums. So that was kind of, and my favorite ashtray. It was probably 8 o'clock in the morning. I'd stayed up all night because I didn't want to go to sleep because I was afraid that I'd oversleep and he would wake up before I would. And I knew I needed to get out of the house before he woke up. So as I went out to the car to put Nick in the car, I heard Jeff coming down the steps. And I remember my heart just was racing because I didn't want him to you know, stop me. So I got in the car, and I remember as I started the car, I saw him, and he had his hands up. He was just like beating the door. You know, he didn't come out though, which was good.
So what happened with you and Nick after the divorce?
After the separation, he was 19 months old, and I moved back to Statesville, and he and I lived together for 3 more years. He was just a great kid, always happy, and loved just kind of hanging out. He rode his bike everywhere. Just loved riding his bike. The saddest part was when he left home at 15. I'll never forget, he came into the kitchen one day and said, "What would it be like for you if I would move in with my dad?" And my world stopped because I couldn't imagine that happening. I still to this day don't know if I made a good decision by, I guess, allowing it to happen. I don't know that I could have really stopped it. We kept in touch. I don't know how often we kept in touch, but there was not a period of more than a week or so that went by that we didn't talk to each other. And I wonder if the relationship would have been, I know it would have been different, but I wonder if missing those really tough years meaning 15 to 19 or so for Nick were not terrible, but they were really tough years. And maybe if I'd been with him every day, our relationship wouldn't have been as good as it has turned out to be. I felt like he really needed to experience his dad himself. I never talked, I won't say I never, I tried to never influence him about his father. And I was certain that he had a curiosity about who his dad, you know, was as he was getting older.
When did you first realize that you wanted to be a therapist?
I got a job right out of college in 1977 as a social caseworker at Catholic Social Services. I was interviewed by a ton of nuns and the archbishop of that diocese and priests, and it was very intimidating. But after the interview, Sister Gail, my first supervisor, came out, and I'll never forget it. She said, "We have decided that we would like to offer you the job because you have a gift." I thought, well, hell, she's a nun. I guess she knows what she's talking about. Then I was a protective services worker and a family planning coordinator at the Department of Social Services in Stanley County. I didn't work after that because when I had Nick, I stayed home with him. Then the next job I had was Barium Springs. I stayed there 7 years. That was the longest I'd been anywhere. Barium Springs started out to be an orphanage, and then it morphed into a place that troubled teens were sent. That's when I worked there.
Yeah.
And then it turned from that more into a psychiatric facility for children that can't make it in foster care. And some of the kids that I had ended up in prison because they couldn't make it. I got my master's in social work while I was at Barium Springs. They paid for a portion of my school. As soon as I got my master's, I got the heck out of there because it was a really tough place to work. I loved it, but it was tough. And that's where I got the knife held in my throat.
What?
In that little area right there.
Mm-hmm.
I had come back from a visit with a guy named Jody's foster parents. I told him that the foster family was not going to be able to take him for Christmas. He reached down and started kind of to scratch at his leg, and he pulled back this knife and started flipping it. I don't remember the whole conversation, obviously, because it was pretty traumatic. But at a certain point, he started leaning over, and he put the knife somewhere in here.
Yeah.
And just started talking really, really slowly. I said, Jody, I don't know who you are thinking about hurting right now. It seems like it is me. And it seemed like a long time, but I honestly don't know if it was a long time or it just seemed like a long time. And at a certain point, I got up, I locked him in that little area because there was a lock on the outside of the door. I think he had my keys. So the lock, you could just turn like on the outside of the door, I think, or something. So I said, Jody, when I knew I was safe, I said, okay, one of two things can happen. I can go get Ray, who was he played for the Cleveland Browns, or we can walk down to the cottage and we can figure this out. I opened the door and we walked down to the cottage together. And I went to the left to the office where those 3 windows were, and Ray was there, and he looked at me and he knew he'd really screwed up. He said, "Oh my God, I left you there with Jody. I'm so sorry." And I just fell into his arms and just I don't know if I cried, I don't know what I did, but I just knew I was safe. And Paul Risk, who was also a good friend of mine, was the director at the time, and he said, okay, you got to get back on the horse. So tomorrow you're going to take Jody down to Charlotte with Ray for an assessment. And I said, yeah, right. He said, Ray will be with you. Nothing will. Do you trust Ray? And I said, yeah, but I'm not going. And he said, but you've got to go. You can't let this get you. I trusted Paul, and he was right. I needed to go. So that's the cottage, the back of the cottage. All the kids they'd jump out of that window to the left if they were going to jump out and run up the hill this way, and they'd go back into those woods. And I'd have to, at 3 o'clock in the morning, sometimes I'd go to call, if I was on call. Mm-hmm. And I'd have to go chase those kids down by myself.
Oh my God.
With Nick, sometimes in the back seat. I got my ear knocked in that same cafeteria.
Oh my God.
Because kids, they started to fight, and I got in the midst of them just like I was big enough to do something about it. And of course I wasn't. But they had respect for me. I mean, they didn't much like me. If I had to deal with them, they were going to get what they deserved, which is usually not good.
Yeah.
I was tough on them. You kind of didn't think you'd done a good job that day if you hadn't gotten called a motherfucker at some point. From there, I went to United Family Services in Charlotte, which has a training institute within that agency. We had a one-way mirror, and very seasoned therapists would sit behind the mirror and watch us do therapy, literally with clients. And of course the clients had signed permission. Mentor that I've had since then is Pat Love. We were at a retreat and she said, "You're holding something back. I don't know what it is." And I knew exactly what she was talking about. And I said, well, I've been told that I joined too much with my clients and that I need to be more clinical. And she said, "You got to forget that." She said, "I want the next tape I see," because we had to tape our sessions and then she would critique them. She said, "It's going to be different because you're going to be different. You're going to be yourself." And so, that was cool. I really owe a lot to her. And then after United Family Services, in 1994, I guess it was, I started a private practice all on my own. So that's the first time I wasn't practicing therapy, for an agency.
Mm-hmm. And you've been doing that ever since?
Mm-hmm.
And have you liked it just as much?
Better.
Better?
Because when you are on your own, you don't have all the political BS to deal with in agencies that just kind of come with that territory. The 3 years between me leaving Jeff and meeting your dad were fun. Period. You can't know more. It was fun because I'd had to be the adult with Jeff all the time. And I didn't have to be the adult anymore because he wasn't around. Carrie Poole and I did a lot of things together. She lived in New York City. And so I went to see her 2 or 3 times and left Nick with my parents. And that was fun. And I kind of went through a second adolescence, let's just say that. And it was fun. And I decided by the time I met your dad that I was having fun, and if I met somebody, that was good, and if I didn't meet somebody, that was good. Yeah. So that's when I think it's time for a relationship. A serious relationship is when you don't have to have one.
So how did you guys first meet?
Kelley invited me and David to a baby shower / cocktail party without babies.
So I met your dad through my ex-husband, who's the father of both my kids, and loved your dad just immediately. And then I did something really bad. So I had a baby. That wasn't the bad part. That's good. And we were having a shower at my dad's house. And I just loved your dad, and I wanted him to meet a fabulous woman, and I didn't know what kind of women he liked.
So Kelley had 3 women, me being one of them, lined up to meet your dad.
She always likes to tell this. Tell people. I did not know any of this. I was just at a party. So
I invited 2 or 3 women for David to meet, but I did not tell the women that there were other women there. When it was just a party.
Betty came towards me at the hors d'oeuvre line, and naturally I had food in my mouth when she stuck out her hand to shake it, and so I had to finish what I had in my mouth, and then said hello. So yeah, that's how we met.
Was it like an immediate connection, or did it take a while, you think?
Well, she had other plans later that night, so she left.
Had a date in Charlotte. He dated the other 2 women first.
Wow.
She won.
There's that. I think he dated both the other ones first.
Oh, I don't think so.
No, he did.
He did?
He did.
I didn't know that.
He did.
Really?
I know one of them, maybe 2. But I called him, and he said, "Well, I have something to do this weekend, but next weekend I'm free." I thought, right. But he called, and it was very smooth courtship. It was just, and it was cool because, Kelley was my best friend and John was his best friend at the time.
I asked her out on a date to a place called Big Daddy's. It was a seafood place. So yeah, she was a deep thinker, and I liked that. And we talked about our failures that we had in our previous marriages. Mine was very short, 7 months, and hers was long enough to have Nick. So she had a 5-year-old at that time. It added a layer of complexity to it, let's just say. because I was unaccustomed to that. But I kind of had figured out by then, because of the other girls that I had dated during this period leading up to Betty, that several of them had kids, because I'm in my late 20s, and chances are the women you meet and date are going to have kids. So I had kind of tossed it around in my head already, so I had become pretty comfortable with it. But yeah, it was a learning experience, because I didn't know, I hadn't been around them to that degree.
It was rough at times, very rough at times, but
Nick didn't really want me in this neat little life that he and his mom had together. It was going pretty well without me, so here I am, kind of taking 50% of the attention away that she was giving him.
When did you guys start thinking of having a child together?
Well, I got pregnant without trying, and that pregnancy didn't work out. So from that point on, it felt to me like that's what we needed to do. And then we tried for 14 years through fertility treatment to have a baby, and we had 2 ectopic pregnancies and ended up with 3 miscarriages. We thought about adoption, Russian and Chinese adoption, and nothing felt quite right. It would go up to a point and then just kind of stop. And both of us, I don't think either one of us really wanted that. It didn't feel like to me. And then I got the idea of surrogacy.
I've got 3 kids already, and I've had wonderful pregnancies. And so I've always thought about being a surrogate for someone, because I'm like, and there was some family members I thought of, and then one day I just read like an article in Carolina Parent Magazine of a surrogate in Raleigh. So I just kind of reached out to her. How'd you get started?
Oh, I forgot about that. Yeah.
And then of course I asked my husband, would he be okay if I looked into this, and he was fine with that. First you have to decide what type of surrogacy you want, and y'all didn't care.
Well, they wanted to use one of my eggs, and I said, they're just too old. Let's just not do that.
And then me as a surrogate, when I looked into details of being IVF, you had to take injections and this and that, and I'm not big on needles. And so I'm like, artificial? Oh, that seems, easy. I mean, I think the reason most people don't pick artificial because it is your egg, and I felt like I could handle that,
Yeah. Then the minute I met Melissa, it was like, okay.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
It was, what, do you remember that?
In Maryland?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, are you kidding me?
It was the second we met.
Yeah.
Because I was nervous. And
I was
remember
nervous.
You hugged me and you said, I'm so nervous. And I said, mine too.
Yeah.
So what was the process leading up to that? Like, what did you have to do? What did you and Dad have to do for the whole process?
Well, we had to be interviewed by the agency, and we had to make a booklet. I didn't bring it, I meant to. It was a booklet of like why we wanted to do this, with pictures and kind of our story. And then we gave that to the agency, and the agency then gave you I think several to look at or something.
Yeah, because I had to choose. Not had to choose, but they give you, and just we read theirs and just immediate attraction. But yeah, every time I had an appointment, she would come and we'd make it fun. We'd go out to lunch or something.
Yeah.
She'd always bring me a gift.
I did.
Which was so sweet. Yes, I could go upstairs and I still have the first necklace you gave me that you got from that jewelry store. It was like that teal green blue,
I forgot all
beaded.
about that. Yeah.
Oh, well, that meant a lot to me. I was just like,
Well,
it just kind of felt special,
But somebody's having a baby for you. It's like, you never made me feel like that we owed you anything. It was not that at all, but I was just so grateful because I didn't think it would ever happen. And there'd been a lot of years that we had a lot of sad times, and so this was like, I was really in disbelief. And I remember one time, I think you were like 8 months pregnant, and I said, I still can't believe this. And you said something like, well, you better believe it because this is your baby.
You were always very open about the whole situation. Did you and Dad talk before I was born, or when I was very early, about when you were going to tell me, or if you were
Yeah, we said we always wanted you to know, that, how you'd come to be, and we wanted you to know Melissa and Rodney and her kids.
Yeah.
There was no secrecy to it.
Do you ever feel bad that like you couldn't be the real mom?
No.
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 Yeah.
It was, I didn't care whose egg it was. It was, just the experience of raising a baby with your dad.
Yeah.
And and when I met Melissa, it was like, sure, I want her egg. Because her family history is a lot cleaner than mine. So it's like, yeah, her egg's probably a lot better off. You're better off with her egg.
Melissa, would you ever do another surrogacy if you had the opportunity to, and like maybe were younger?
Oh, I definitely would.
Yeah.
Yeah. In fact, was it maybe when Locke was about 2, or was there a chance that y'all might have?
Yeah, we talked about
about having another one, and I really wanted to.
Yeah.
If she wanted to, I really wanted to do that. Unfortunately, my husband and my whole family has been really wonderful. But yeah, Rodney was like, let's kind of count our blessings, because you're older. One of the best things I've ever done.
I cried.
She cried all the time. All the time. Which I'm not an emotional person, and but she did get me. She got me at the very end. Remember that?
One time,
Remember the very end?
They put a necklace with 4 little diamonds or something from all the children that you'd had, including you, and you teared up then.
She gave it to me in the hospital, and I opened it, and it was a pretty necklace, necklace, and I'm looking at it, and I'm like, oh, this is pretty. She said, well, it represents every child you had, and then I went, I was like, you got me. We all got along, and Rodney, he'd have fun with it. We're walking around, and I'm 7-8 months pregnant with 3 kids, and you can imagine. People are like, oh, congratulations. And Rodney's like, yeah, but it's not mine. And he's like, but I like the guy. He's really nice, so we'd have a good time with it, of course.
What do you think you've taken away most from this whole opportunity?
You're the baby that we were supposed to have. I remember driving home with you in the back seat, asleep. You always slept. And I was calling somebody and leaving a message, and I just said, I now understand why I had the miscarriages and the ectopic pregnancies, because this is the baby we were supposed to have.
Yeah.
So. Part of why I chose artificial insemination and to pick someone that would live close as I do want, a relationship with Betty and David and you, and so I'm glad that.
Didn't want to just give birth to a random couple.
Right.
California or something.
Right, exactly. So, because it's a special thing, and
hopefully.
So you got to remember, this is Nick. He was already 25 when all of this was starting to go down about having a surrogate. Betty had long wanted a child between the 2 of us. Of course, since we couldn't have it naturally, now the surrogacy thing kind of intrigued me. So I got on board slowly. It wasn't an immediate thing, but because I wasn't getting any younger, right? And so that entered into the picture, and I had mapped out in my head a future without a kid, because I'd kind of gotten used to the idea by then. So having a kid would have changed the calculus and all of that for me. So, but I remember picking up a book of some of my family tree and seeing all of the captions that were written about those that continued to have children. Those that didn't end up having children, it was just a footnote. So I decided I didn't want to be a footnote.
It didn't make sense to a lot of people because they'd had children, and we hadn't had a child together, so it made perfect sense to us.
Yeah. Because they couldn't imagine themselves doing that.
Yeah.
It's a brave thing.
Yeah.
Because she was 40 when we started talking seriously. I guess meeting Melissa, you were 48.
47.
It was exciting.
This is your chance.
Exciting. We kind of bought into the idea and was moving forward rapidly.
And I thought, okay, if I look back at my life when I'm 46 or 47, what will I have said to myself, my future self say to myself now, and it was clear, just take a chance, go for it.
Yeah.
So, because you're going to be sorry if you don't.
Yeah.
Are you going to have regrets? Yes. So that's why you're here.
And I liked having the idea of having a kid, of my blood.
Yeah.
That was kind of cool.
So what year are you guys on now?
30, married in 87. This is 20,
the
this is
math.
coming up 24, so 37 years.
You know how I started making jewelry?
I think I remember. How?
Kelley and I started making jewelry out of, we get watercolor board. We weren't painting any images, it was all very abstract. And then I got the idea of, we'd paint all of this big board, and then I'd cut it. I wish I had some of them. I'd just cut up the pieces like in strips, or sometimes we'd rip them, and then we'd put the pieces of paper together and make jewelry out of them, which just sounds kind of crazy, but they were very light and people loved them, and we sold it in like those downtown markets. And then a bead store opened up in downtown Mooresville, and I didn't go in for a couple of years because I knew that if I went in I'd probably get hooked, because I get hooked on stuff a lot. But one day I was walking Sadie, and Sadie was sniffing around, and I decided, well, I'll go in. And then I loved the place. Then I picked out this necklace. That was in a Sundance catalog. And it was very, very, very intricate and difficult, and I didn't know it. I just thought, well, I like this, so I'm going to try to make this. It took me about 3 weeks to do. It cost me about $300 to get all the supplies to do it with, because the woman didn't tell me that this bracelet that I wanted to make, every part of that bracelet had a different kind of way to work with beads, like, and there was wire wrap, and there were all kinds of techniques in this one necklace. And the person should have said, this is way too much for your first piece of jewelry. But the good news was, by the time I got finished, I knew how to make stuff.
Yeah.
Which was bad news, because then I bought all these beads. Then I decided, well, I've got all these pieces of jewelry, I got to do something with them. So I had to start an Etsy shop. And it's called Lizzie McNeil Studio. And McNeil being your middle name, and my mother's Granny McNeil is who raised my mom, so that's why McNeil is such an important name to me. So I put it with the jewelry to compare it to, but I think I've got 250 sales in my shop, from my shop.
That sounds like a success.
I don't know. I didn't mean for it to be a business. I meant to make a necklace.
What do you guys feel like is your biggest takeaway on like how to have a good relationship or how to sustain it, I guess?
Just let each other be who we are, and not try to change the other one to the, well, I mean, you have to change in order to be a couple, but I think we're good at knowing that we each have our own lives. We just don't expect everything from each other, because you can't get everything from a relationship. That's my take.
Yeah, I can't require her to make me happy, and she can't require me to make her happy. That's
Our own jobs.
our own jobs. Yeah, right. So you have to allow each other to grow in their own way.
Yeah. Do you think being a marriage counselor helped you in learning that, or do you think?
Well, yes and no. It's interesting that a lot of the things that I talk to couples about, I think it's probably what I talk about makes sense, and there are a lot of like almost recipes for how to have a good relationship, and it's easier to teach than it is to put into action. So I don't think because I'm a marital therapist, I'm a good wife. Long-term relationships ebb and flow, you know. Knowing that is helpful to me, that the relationship isn't going to be perfect the entire time. You can't work on a relationship and then it's done.
Yeah.
You know, you work on the relationship as you go, and the work is never done. And I say work because it's doing things that you're not inclined to do that makes a marriage good.
I mean, that's all my questions. Do you guys have any other points you would like to touch on, or like that you think is important to share?
You know, enjoy the ride and have confidence that we can get to the other side of this thing. You know, maybe not unscarred, but that's okay.
Yeah.
Scars are fun to show off.
Do you see qualities of Jeff in Nick?
I do. Nick and I've talked about that the cards that he was dealt, the genetic cards he was dealt, his anger, his temper is something that he's worked really hard on, and he doesn't want to be like his dad. And when I see him parenting Addison, he is the furthest thing from his dad. He's attentive. He goes on all of our field trips. He's as involved as any dad could possibly be. And I'm just so proud of him when I see him parenting. Well, since Addison has been born, I've gone to see her, tried to go see her, and I think I've done a pretty good job of it every 3 or 4 months. We dance, we do jewelry together. She likes to make jewelry, and we have a jewelry store that we call Addison and BB's Jewelry Store, and Minnie Mouse frequents that store. Mickey has had us make custom pieces for her. Having a grandchild is amazing. It's not like anything I ever expected it to be. And I see my mother in her.
How has it been going through different phases of your lives together? Like going from being a child to being an adult around each other? Like
there's always some part of me that doesn't feel like I'm grown up yet. And I love that. I mean, one of the phases of my life that Betty was just incredibly instrumental in helping me find myself was in my marriage to John, which was like 17 years. I didn't know he was an alcoholic. And so I think Betty caught on to that before I did. And I would just start telling Betty stories. And she'd be going like this. Really? And I don't know, you helped me you were so kind. You can't see yourself in situations like that. And you were fearful to leave. Yeah. For, I guess, a number of reasons, but I don't think you saw it as fear. You saw it as, this is just the situation I'm in. So I think maybe I helped you see a little bit of that. You did. You were really more than anybody else, because I just don't think I talked to very many people, and you were patient and kind, but you stayed on it. You kept bringing me back to what's true. Yeah, that's probably the most instrumental thing when I look at all of our years, which is like 50 years of being friends, that you being there for me for all of that was a lot. It's hard to admit that something's not going to work, especially when you have 2 kids. And so true. You're saying that brings up that I think both of us had an element of being oblivious. Yeah. Oh yeah. I know I did. I know I was oblivious. Well, I married Jeff Martin. I know.
What do you guys think is the quality that has like made you guys such close friends after all these years?
Trust. I can trust Kelley with anything. There's nothing I wouldn't tell her. You, I would trust you with my life. I know you always have my best interest at heart, always. And I just love that about you, because I don't have a sister. Yeah. Same. I couldn't say it any better. Yeah, a truly deep level of trust.
it's an abiding trust that supersedes anything in any other relationship. So,
Hope that I go first,
ooh,
because I can't imagine losing you. I can't imagine that.
oh, thank you. I love you.
Love you too. I think we did good.
I think we did good.
Did we do good?
Are we good?
Yeah, you're all good.
Of all the things in my life that have brought me joy, you and Nick and Addison have brought me more joy than any being could have ever brought me. And I appreciate you. I appreciate you doing this. It means a lot.
And on that note, that brings us to the end of Betty's story so far. Although my mom's life hasn't been revolutionary in any sense, I think her stories perfectly encapsulate what it means to live. She has seen a lot of life, both very pretty and very ugly. However, no matter the circumstances, she has persevered and pushed through all of it. I didn't make this in hopes that you would learn something, and if anything, this is just for me to just have as my own memory of her. Maybe inspire some of you to learn about your parents' life before you, or just others around you, friends or family. There's so much that goes on behind the scenes in other people's lives that we don't know about and we never take the time to ask and learn about. Regardless of if you guys took something away from this, I hope you enjoyed learning about my mom's life.
Make me